Nick, do you want to do a little intro?
Yeah, just going to do the introduction. So this is our Sleep is the New Exercise session with League Managers Association speaker Dr. Dorian Dugmore. Dorian's background is in corporate wellness and sport health. He ran for a number of years the largest cardiac rehabilitation centre in Toronto, Canada, where he still has a home. He also played and coached football internationally at World Games level. Dorian has built several award-winning wellness programs for brands like Adidas and Causeway. He also created the LMA's Fit to Manage program for the football managers and is now a consultant to them. So if you want to go ahead and start the session.
Great. Well, there we go. Super. Thanks very much, Nick. Well, good afternoon, everybody. A real pleasure to meet you all. And I'll kick right off into the presentation, and hopefully things will work well. Let's just see. There we go. So sleep is the new exercise. Well, sleep is vitally important. People don't realize how important sleep is. Sleep actually is when your cells repair. So without adequate sleep, then you just will not recover in terms of your health and well-being and your cellular structure. So it's influenced by what you eat, your diet. It's influenced by exercise. It's certainly influenced by a lot of stress, particularly the hormones that are secreted when you're very stressed, which can affect your sleep, and also your lifestyle. So these are key markers in terms of affecting your sleep. That means it'll affect your mental health, your emotional well-being, and also your physical performance. And just the fast pace of living really means that a lot of people are very often sleep deprived. They're just not getting enough sleep. If you look at some of the major catastrophes around the world over recent decades, Exxon Valdez, Chernobyl, the Gulf of Mexico, in all of those, lack of sleep and tiredness have been implicated. And of course, it becomes especially highlighted when people are involved in things like shift work. And that in your business, I'm sure, is a challenging issue. And there are various things you can do to try and alleviate some of the problems there, like building up towards the time that you'll be normally awake, but now normally asleep rather, but now you have to change and be awake. Then by sort of gradually working towards those sorts of hours where you're kept awake more can help you cope. There are lots of other things you can do in terms of shift work. When you go home and you want to sleep, then a darkened room, covering your eyes, listening to white noise are some of the things that can really mirror what it would be like when you're asleep. So it's a very, very important component of your health and well-being. If you don't get adequate sleep, enough sleep, then it can affect your immune system, and it can leave some of the stress hormones in your body during a period of time when you should be resting. And a lot of those sorts of things will increase risk, diabetic risk, cancer risk, obesity, specifically heart disease in a lot of ways, depression, and even memory loss. And a lot of those are as a result of not sleeping effectively. And in fact, one night's sleep deprivation can raise your insulin levels, the thing that helps to control your sugars. And if they're raised, then you increase your inability to process your sugars effectively. And that can mirror a person with things like type 2 diabetes, which is very common as we age, certainly in decades beyond the 40s. So these are some of the problems and challenges that happen when we don't get enough sleep. One of the things that can happen as a result of sleep deprivation is it can affect a thing called your telomeres, and your own DNA, which is specific to every individual, and your chromosomes are the thing that, if you like, depict what you are, the you in your existence. And at the end of those chromosomes, you've got little things. They're like bootlaces, and they're called telomeres. And they protect your chromosomes. They protect very often how quickly you will age and your health and your well-being. And as a natural process throughout the age range continuum, those telomeres will shorten, they'll fray, and that's a real marker for aging, particularly premature aging. And of course, sleep deprivation reduces your telomere length and can affect quite significantly how quickly you age. So very, very important indeed. This is the sleep cycle, and it's, I suppose, a very important component of the presentation today. And you have three major cycles when you're sleeping. When you first go to bed and you start to fall asleep, that's called light sleep. And that's indicated in the green on the slide there. And light sleep is when your respiration starts to slow down, your blood pressure drops, your heart rate starts to slow, your body temperature starts to cool, and you start to fall asleep. And it lasts anything from, normally from 15 to 20 minutes. And then following that light sleep, you'll very often, in the early phases of a night's sleep, go into deep sleep or delta sleep. And that's in the red indicated on the slide there. And that's when your cells repair. That's when your body repairs itself, when you really are recovering and repairing, ready for the next day. And that can last 30 to 40 minutes. And then you've got a thing called REM sleep. REM stands for rapid eye movement. It's very often associated with when you dream. That's dream sleep. And so if you add all of those three components together, they last about 90 minutes. And that's a complete sleep cycle. And ideally, for full cell repair and full rejuvenation, ready for the next day, you need 5 or 6 of those sessions containing the elements I've just described. So I'm telling you there that you need 7 or 8 hours sleep. And people almost have a pride in the fact that they can get by with insufficient sleep. I think Maggie Thatcher was the one of the most famous cases that said she can survive on 4 hours sleep, but she got premature Alzheimer's and dementia. And so the whole sleep element is really, really important. So that's the sleep cycle. So some tips for better sleep. Well, the first thing you need to do is to schedule sleep into your project planning. So many people eat into sleep thinking if they work a little bit longer and, maintain the waking state a little bit longer, then they can actually get by. Well, that is robbing Peter to pay Paul, really, and you'll suffer as a result of that happening. So as a tip, people should see sleep as a key part of their effective work and health, rather than an obstacle that they have got to work around, and that will stop them or interfere with their working. The whole scenario around sleep is around a thing called your circadian rhythms. And your circadian rhythms are the 24-hour sleep cycle where different things happen to your sleep. And so if you look at the chart there, the slide there, you can see that what starts to happen as you start to wake in the mornings, a thing called melatonin, which is a special hormone that really helps you relax, starts to be reduced. And to wake up in the morning, you produce another stress hormone called cortisol. And cortisol actually is the thing that wakes you up. So at sort of 6:45 in the morning, your blood pressure rises, and then by the time you get to 7:30, your melatonin secretions drop, the thing that sent you to sleep earlier on. You start to be really alert, probably around 10 in the morning, and then by the afternoon, you'll see some of the things. The best coordination is sort of mid-afternoon. And so it goes until 5 o'clock, when you're very often more efficient in neuromuscular control and your heart control. Your blood pressure peaks at around 6 or 7 o'clock in the early evening. And then probably your highest body temperature is around sort of 7 to 8 o'clock. But by the time it comes to 9 o'clock, you start to produce more melatonin, and that's produced through a gland in your brain, a pineal gland, and that helps to relax you. It helps to calm you down and get you ready for sleep. The highest productions of melatonin are generally between 10 o'clock in the evening and 2 o'clock in the morning. So the ideal time to go to bed would be during 10 till 11 o'clock is the advice that people are given. And so again, you can see the circadian rhythms there that are mentioned, and some of the things that I've just described to you occur during the process of the day. And some people who really struggle to sleep will take melatonin. It's difficult to get in this country. It's easily available in places like Canada and the States. And if you look at people like flight attendants, they'll very often take melatonin to, if you like, mirror the relaxation feeling and put the body at rest and really almost kid the body into sleep mode. If you disturb those circadian rhythms, that's when you'll have problems. And so there are lots of things you can do to make those rhythms very, very stable. Which raises the question, should you nap? Well, that's a really interesting question. Now, napping can have benefits, and you'll have different opinions. Some people, authorities will say you shouldn't nap, others will say you should nap. Well, the guidelines generally for napping are, if you nap for a short period of time, 10 or 20 minutes, then you'll still prematurely probably be in light sleep. So when you wake up after a short nap, very often you won't feel groggy. If you nap for longer than that, 30 to 60 minutes, and you wake up, you'll feel groggy. Why? Because you've actually woken up in the middle of the delta deep sleep. And that's when you feel really groggy. You've actually disturbed your sleep cycle. So either a sort of a 10, 15, maximum 20-minute nap, or, believe it or not, a 90-minute nap. Because if you go through for 90 minutes, then you'll have gone through a complete sleep cycle. And that cycle contains the light sleep, the REM sleep, and the delta or the repair sleep. And if you wake up after 90 minutes, then very often you won't feel so groggy. Happened to me recently. I was actually driving down from the northeast, and I pulled into the services, and I was feeling a little bit tired, and I thought I'll just take a nap. And so I thought I'll take 20 minutes. And surprise, surprise, 90 minutes later, I woke up and felt absolutely fine. Well, I did feel fine until I got back home and I had a letter in the post. I must have actually slept a little bit longer. I'd been in the service area for 2 hours and I got a fine for £60. So that was the most expensive nap that I'd taken during that journey home. So what are some of the rules of healthy sleep? Well, it's recommended, certainly, when you wake up in the morning, particularly the weather you're having at the moment, you go for a walk just for 10 or 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Why? Because that boosts another hormone in your body called serotonin. Serotonin is the brain connector. It connects you your neurons in your brain, where you really wake up and you become sharper more quickly. So there's a good production of serotonin. Keeping your body nice and cool for healthy sleep between 16 and 19 degrees is ideal. Anything warmer than that, and your metabolism will not be relaxing and recovering properly as it would in your delta sleep. Reading something before you go to bed that's nice and easy and relaxing is not a bad idea. Keeping the room fresh and airy is good. Building a sleep regimen into your day so you sleep at the same time is really, really important, because then your body gets regulated and gets used to sleeping, and that makes the whole process of falling asleep easier. And then meditating and relaxing and practicing some meditation techniques are also very, very important before you go to sleep. And I'll actually talk to you about those as we go through the presentation and give you some simple ideas on how you can use them when you're relaxing and meditating. Things that aren't great for sleeping: coffee, tea to a lesser extent, but the advice generally is you shouldn't drink coffee after about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, because it will still keep you wired and it'll take 5 or 6 hours to get even longer out of your system. So that's quite funny when you go to restaurants and the last thing they offer you before you leave is a cup of coffee. It's almost as if they're saying to you, would you like a pill to keep you awake? So that's not a good idea at all. Alcohol, well, that's an interesting one. Alcohol tends to relax you after one drink. Any more than that, and you bypass a lot of the light sleep and the REM sleep, the dream sleep, and you go prematurely into deep sleep and then come out of it, and it gets fragmented as the night sleep goes along. So it's a little bit of a fool's paradise. Too much alcohol will actually send you to sleep very quickly, but then disrupt and disturb your sleep. Whereas maybe one glass of wine or one measure of alcohol will help you relax, but any more will tend to be a problem for you. Overeating, again, is a problem before you sleep, because you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You have your digestive system that is trying to process the food and metabolize the food, and at the same time your body's trying to relax and sleep, and so that's not a good thing before you sleep. Wiring yourself up watching horror movies or real action movies and getting some of the stress hormones to rise again will disturb your sleep. And that's a really interesting, the next one, gadgets. Well, there's really good research to show now that putting your mobile phone by the side of your bed can pass things like alpha and gamma rays across into your brain and disturb your sleep. The same as blue light from clocks can do the same thing. And so actually having gadgets that can interfere with your sleep are a problem. And that's why the general advice is to actually switch off your computers an hour before you go to bed, because again, a similar effect can happen from computer screens. And of course, the last one there, hard training. Well, it takes 4 to 6 hours for your body to come down from a hard exercise session. And so if you're training in the late hours of the day, then your body won't be able to relax effectively as if you train earlier on in the day, if you can manage to do that. That's not always possible, and there are different things that can affect your ability as to when you can train, but try and avoid late night training because it will disturb your sleep. So some better tips for sleeping. Timing is the key. I've already said our best melatonin release comes between 10 and 2 o'clock in the morning. So having a regular sleep pattern is very, very important to have a good quality sleep. It isn't always possible, but if you can at best, try and create that regular sleep pattern. Some of the things you can take to help sleep, magnesium is one of the things that you can help to take sleep, because that has a relaxing effect on the body, and the body doesn't store magnesium. And so, you know, taking a magnesium supplement together with vitamin D is very, very good for your health. And probably up to 80% of people are deficient in magnesium. So, you know, taking that as a supplement is quite good. Some people even spray magnesium onto their pillows to help them relax. Lavender is another useful thing that has a sort of a dopamine relaxing type effect on you as you sleep. So there's some tips for relaxing when you go to sleep. Create the right environment in your bedroom, and having a cool bedroom with cool colors and relaxing temperature is the sort of environment that you want to sleep in. And that's distinctly opposite to the next slide, which is the office in your bedroom. You know, where you've got TVs and computers and lots of things that can actually disturb your sleep and affect your sleep and cause you a problem. So I suppose the golden rule there would be, as much as you possibly can, keep your office out of the bedroom. The ideal scenario is use the bedroom for two things: intimacy and sleeping. And those things will generate two particular hormone substances that will relax you. Oxytocin is the love chemical. That tends to vasodilate your circulation, put you on a relaxed high, put you in a very, very positive mood. And serotonin is also a similar type of thing. That's the brain connector I mentioned earlier, that can help you create the right mood for sleep. And so those are the best things to develop when you're sleeping. Sleep in a dark room, that is very, very important for good quality sleep, because that then helps you produce melatonin. And melatonin is the thing that really will relax your body, bring down all the things I mentioned earlier, your blood pressure, your heart rate, all the physiology around your body, and help you relax. If you can't, if you're a shift worker, for example, using an iPad that closes your eyes off to natural daylight, making the room dark, even using things like white noise that keeps out, you know, the noise of the day, can help you if you're a shift worker and you want to try and mimic the natural circadian rhythm of a darkened room, with the normal physiology that we mentioned earlier there. So that is very, very important. So tips for better sleep again. Let's just look at those. Don't sleep with the clock facing you, especially with white or blue digits, because the blue light, like that emanates from clocks and phones, will disturb your sleep and affect your ability to relax. So at best, turn the clock away from you and not watch the clock as you go through the night. Some people say that things like Himalayan salt lamps are very, very good, because they can generate a super mood for sleeping, a sort of a pinky, relaxing mood, and produce negative ions. And the effect of those can then get rid of contaminants in the bedroom and bugs and things like that. So again, there's some suggestions that people would recommend when you're sleeping. Also, remember when you're sleeping that's when the exercise you may have done earlier in the day goes through a repair sequence. When you exercise during the day, particularly if you're using things like weights.
7:38.
Hello, sorry. I beg your pardon. So So somebody asked me a question. So when you're exercising during the day, you get little micro tears in your muscle. And that's a natural process, particularly if you do strength training and weight training. And when you sleep, those micro tears repair. So it's so important that you get adequate rest during your sleep to repair things like the micro tears in your muscles. Early morning exercise actually is really, really good for you because it actually prepares you for good sleep in the evening. There's a big famous study, the Appalachian State study, that said that what happens during that process, your circadian rhythms are stabilized, and by the time you're ready to go to sleep, all of your body chemistry will relax a lot more effectively following your ability to practice early morning exercise. And so that is a really good tip again. Whereas late night exercises, I mentioned earlier, actually raises your body core temperature, and it takes 4 to 6 hours for that to actually come down. I work very closely. I'm on a project called Project Score, which is looking at dementia in the world of sport, particularly in the world of football. And Michael Gray, who's the neuroscientist that works on Project Score, highly recommends that you do a brain dump before you go to bed. So very often, if you've got things on your mind, you've got challenges from the day, it's easy to take those to bed with you and worry about them, which will prevent you falling into the deep sleep, the restorative sleep that you need. So he recommends doing a brain dump. So taking all the things you're really worried about and writing them down in a notepad. And it's almost as if you're parking the worries and the concerns before you go to bed, because realistically, you can do nothing about them during that period of sleep. So by doing a brain dump, by writing them down on a notebook, then that's a really good technique to help you relax and move into deep sleep. Looking at this particular circle, it's called the circle of control. And I've used it a lot when I've been coaching leaders in the corporate world and the sporting world. And there are 3 circles you can see there. The middle circle, the circle of control, reflects problems, challenges, issues that you've got that only you can solve. Then the next circle around it, the circle of influence, are issues, challenges that you have a big influence on, but you need other people to solve those issues and challenges. And the final circle of concern, it may be a problem, an issue that you're concerned with, but you have no direct control of it and no influence on it. And the important thing there is not to let the circle of concern influence you and affect your sleep. I'll tell you a great story about that. I work with somebody at a major international company who was very, very focused on that third circle, the circle of concern. And what we did, we gave everybody in the room a little notepad of sticky notes, and we asked them to put down all their issues and problems individually on one sticky note. So they had a whole vista of sticky notes with just one problem on each of those notes. And then we asked them to put those notes in either the circle of control, the circle of influence, or the circle of concern. And one of the key leaders in the company put 44 sticky notes in the circle of concern. And his CEO turned around to him and said, "That's why I'm getting emails at 3 o'clock in the morning. You're worried about so many things that you have no influence over and no concern over, and you can't influence in any way, shape or form. So why are you doing that?" And so that's quite a useful one to look at and sort of help you relax and think, well, you know, some of those things I'm worried about, but so the others I just cannot influence at all. And hopefully that will help you, promote a better sleep. So this whole technique is called freeze frame, and it's from a group called HeartMath. And HeartMath is an international organization that looks at helping people with their emotional management and control of their health and well-being. And freeze frame is used in decision making to help people relax and engage a nerve down the center of the chest called the vagus nerve. And you've probably never heard of the vagus nerve, or you may well have done, but the vagus nerve is one of the key influences that generates the good chemistry in your body, the endorphins, the oxytocin, the serotonin that we talked about earlier. And there are very simple techniques that you can use to relax and engage that vagus nerve, particularly useful before you fall asleep, or particularly useful if you've got a problem. And the steps of freeze frame are very simple and straightforward. And the first step that's recommended is that you press an imaginary pause button. So like putting your car into neutral. Then the next step to really engage endorphins and relax is to focus on your breathing, but to breathe in more deeply than you would normally breathe in. So normally you may breathe into a count of 3 or 4. Well, if you breathe into a count of 5 or 6, that starts to engage the vagus nerve. And then you exhale for the same period of time, 5 or 6 seconds. And by doing that, then this central nerve that links the thorax to the brain actually affects your heart, and your chemistry starts to change, and it starts to produce endorphins. And so that deeper breathing, inhalation and exhalation, really helps. And one of the techniques I use with people to help them do that is get them to place their hand over their heart and imagine when they're breathing in, they're actually breathing in through their heart. They're breathing in through their nose and mouth. But to imagine you're breathing in through the gaps between your fingers into your heart, breathing in more deeply, and then breathing out in a more extended period of time really helps you engage this vagus nerve. And what happens then is your body chemistry starts to switch into producing endorphins, and you have a more positive frame of mind. And it's when you've done that you can very often make far more balanced and effective solutions to any challenges that you have. I very often say to people, put your hand up if you've ever received an email that's really pissed you off. And the majority of an audience will raise their hand. And I'll say, if you ever reacted very quickly to that email, and as soon as you press the magic send button, you very often wish, oh, I'd never done that. Well, by the practice of freeze frame, it will actually release you from that instantaneous reaction, which may not be the smartest reaction at that moment in time. But freeze frame is a very, very good technique to use either before you go to bed and you practice it for 5 or 10 minutes, or if you can't sleep and you wake up, then to practice the freeze frame is a good idea. And there's one other tip that goes with it, and that is when you're practicing the breathing, you select something from your emotional memory bank that you associate with being relaxed, at ease, and appreciated. It may be, on holiday, sleeping in a hammock, listening to the sound of the Caribbean, but something that you actually associate with being at ease and relaxed. Because that mental practice of doing that together with the breathing can help change your body chemistry. And it really, really works. I've used it with a lot of key leaders, and the power of freeze frame is very important and will certainly benefit your sleep. I even have a special system, it's called an M wave, that actually changes color if you practice in the breathing techniques properly. So that's freeze frame. So it is very, very powerful, and certainly good if you can't sleep. So tips for better sleep. Well, Jim Lear, there's a book written called The Corporate Athlete, and it's a very, very good book for people that are leaders in the corporate world. And he says that every 90 minutes, you should take a brain break, and you should practice techniques like freeze frame just for 2 or 3 minutes. Nobody need know you're doing it, but just the deeper breathing that you get into the habit of doing every 90 minutes will help switch away some of the stress hormones that may have come out of a challenging meeting and switch you into the endorphin phase very, very quickly through that vagus nerve coming into to operation. And he said every leader throughout the day, every 90 minutes, should take a couple of minutes brain break so that they can refocus, recenter themselves as the working day goes on. So food for thought there in terms of how that would affect your sleep as well. So when in doubt, breathe out and practice that vasovagal breathing. And if you forget everything else that we've said today, that is a very, very powerful tool to have. There are supplements that you can use to complement your sleep, and some of them have a sedative and meditative effect, and there are 3 of the supplements there. Chamomile is well recognized as having a sedative effect before you maybe go to bed. Valerian is another one that is very useful. So there are supplements that you can purchase and buy to help you sleep, and they will just really move you towards that relaxing state that will help you get into the delta sleep, the repair sleep, more quickly. Some interesting things about relaxing your brain. There are 2 brains on show there on that slide. As you look at the slide, the one on the left-hand side is a 30-year-old brain, and the one on the right-hand side is a 75-year-old brain. And that's quite interesting. When you look at those 2, you can see the difference in the density of the brain in the aged brain, and the convolutions in the matrix are spaced out more in the 75-year-old brain compared to the 30-year-old brain. And Michael Gray, the neuroscientist that I work with very closely, said, the bad news is the brain starts to age at 30, but very, very slowly. And then during the process, that will happen. So things like auditory speed, memory can be affected as people age. And so getting adequate sleep to protect the brain is a critical factor. And one of the things I use a lot with people in the corporate world is the thing called the emotional landscape. And as you're looking at the screen there, if you observe those 4 quadrants, as you look at the top left-hand quadrant, I say to people, okay, imagine you're squashing 36 hours into 24 hours, you're on the burn, you're out of control, you're over-challenged, and pretty much you're having a crap day. How do you feel? And give me some words that best describe how you feel, and they come out with words like anxious, angry, I can feel hostile, short-tempered, irritable, no sense of humor, facially full of frowns, I'm agitated, I really don't feel a happy bunny at all. And then I say to them, if you look at that same emotional landscape, look at the bottom left-hand quadrant, how do you feel when you go home after a day like that? And they'll say, tired, I want to be socially isolated, always comes out, I need a drink, I need some alcohol to relax me, I just want to be alone, I just feel frustrated and almost lonely as the day has gone on. The chemistry of those negative traits that I've described to you is the stress chemistry of adrenaline and cortisol. What does adrenaline do? It raises your blood pressure, raises your heart rate, and pumps, you know, some unhealthy hormones into your body. What does cortisol do? Cortisol affects your immune function. Helps you not to effectively fight off infection because it affects part of your white blood cells that's responsible for fighting off infection. And so that's the left-hand side of the emotional landscape. If you look at the slide and look at the right-hand side of the emotional landscape and the top right-hand quadrant, imagine that quadrant, you're having a challenging day, but everything's working out. It's one of those golden days where everything you touch turns to gold. Your challenges you deal with straight away. You've got a sense of humor. You've got great positivity around you, and you're having a great day. What's the chemistry of that? Endorphins, oxytocin, serotonin, the anti-aging hormone called DHEA. Those are the sorts of hormones that happen in that positive scenario. And when you go home in the bottom right-hand quadrant after a day like that, you feel on a high, you feel that the day has been great, your positivity is still there. You may well have one drink to celebrate. Well, it's quite interesting. Where do people drink most? On the left-hand side of the emotional landscape. Research tells us 8 times more on the left-hand side than the right-hand side. Will it affect your sleep? You bet it will. And so the pressure of the left-hand side, if you live there constantly and you don't take enough sleep in particular as a restorative element of your health and well-being, you are going to have health problems. So that's quite a useful one to look at in terms of where you sit emotionally, because we all have to live on the left-hand side some of the time, but having some breaks on the right-hand side, taking sufficient vacations, making time for sleep in particular, so important as you're going through the whole process. And one of the big villains of the piece is the thing called the chimp, and you've probably heard of the chimp. It's called the amygdala, and it lies in the midbrain, and the amygdala reacts 200 times more readily to conflict and challenge than the higher centers of the brain, the cortex and areas like that, that are the places where you've got decisional balance and a lot more of a sort of a sensible approach to things that challenge you. And one of the things that affects the amygdala is being challenged and being in a conflict situation. And I'm going to show you a little clip now. I hope the film works. One of the things that affects that is lack of fairness and lack of empathy. And I'll just show you this next film. Hopefully it will work. I don't know if the sound is coming through. No, I don't think it's worked, which is a shame. Well, basically, it shows some chimps that are that are reacting to the amygdala, but unfortunately, that's a shame. That didn't work. Well, this is an interesting one, coming towards an end now before we'll have some questions. But this is actually the heart rate of a husband as the husband and wife are having an argument, and the argument is about reading a map. And they're getting lost. They're actually coming out of the Heart Math Center in Boulder in California. And you can see what happens. There are 3 things to notice about that argument. When the argument starts, the husband's driving, the wife is reading the map, the heart rate zooms up. And this is heart rate beat by beat per second. And you can see the middle of the argument, the heart rate fluctuates from 140 beats to 90 beats. It's all over the place. What's the chemistry that's driving that? It's the left-hand side of the emotional landscape. It's the stress chemistry. But the other interesting thing to notice is that when the argument's finished, then the heart rate remains erratic and irritable after the argument is finished. What's the half-life of that throughout the day? Between 6 and 8 hours. So I suppose the golden rule there is if you want a good night's sleep, you don't have arguments towards the end of the day, because you know your body chemistry will still be raised. But that's an interesting one that shows you the response to conflict and not getting on well. So this is the stress bell curve, really. Where you want to live is in the sort of top of the bell curve, where you've got some stress, but not too much stress, because if you are constantly worried, then you go down the right-hand side of that stress curve, and that's when you get burnout, and that's when you get major illness. And so, again, making sure you've got restorative sleep to cope with those stresses so that you can deal with them is critically important. What's the effect of constant stress? Well, it actually shreds your neurons in your brain, and the brain connectivity is disrupted when you're constantly stressed. Again, a key reason why you need that 7 to 8 hours sleep for that restorative capacity around your health and well-being. So this is my final slide, and then I'm going to stop there so you can ask me some questions. But this is some famous research by a guy called Sean Acor. It was published in the Harvard Business Review in February 2012, actually. 32 pages of it. And he was asked to go into the major companies in Europe, and this was the time of the financial crisis, and banks were going down the tube. Lehman Brothers had gone down the tube, and he was asked to go into the companies and try and generate a positive culture in a company. And he came up with 5 things. The first one was start your day with 3 gratitudes, 3 things you're grateful for. But then write one of them down for no longer than 2 minutes, because the practice of writing the gratitude down or putting it on your computer sets you up in a positive mood and help your positive chemistry of endorphins to come in. The third one, he said, was actually practice the stuff that Jim Lear said, some meditative practices during the day to actually keep switching you over from the stress hormones to more endorphins. The fourth one was know your health numbers. Know the key markers of your health that looked after you. So things like your blood pressure, your some fractions of your cholesterol, your blood sugars, all your key health markers are critically important. But the final one, and I'll finish on this, was to practice each day 3 random acts of kindness. 3 things you do for somebody else that cost you nothing, that create a positive mood. And those 3 random acts of kindness can make a significant difference. Letting somebody out at the T-junction, thanking the receptionist for always being the positive face of the business, just showing some kindness to somebody else can help change that body chemistry and put you in a good frame of mind. I'm going to stop there so you can ask me some questions. I hope you've enjoyed the presentation, and it's giving you some good food for thought and giving you some good stimulation to get some better sleep. So I'm here for any questions now, and thank you for having me and listening to me.
Thank you very much, Dorian. That was very interesting, especially for me. I don't know about any other people, but I suffer with sleep apnea. So ideas and ways to get a better sleep is always very interesting for me. So I'm going to stop the recording now so that the questions can be whatever you want, but it's not going to be going out to all of the GBRf rate people. So not everybody will know what your issues are. So I'll stop that now, and then if you can fire away with questions.
Sure.